أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. We continue with our topic which we have been discussing, Arbaeen and the related events. So in the previous discussion, we started a discussion where we said that there are areas which we feel that there is a need for further research when it comes to the whole issue of Arbaeen. The first topic which we started in the previous discussion was this, that why is the day of Arbaeen significant? What makes it important? Okay, if it's important, why? And then we discussed what we discussed. The other issue which we started again was this, that why is it recommended to do Ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Arbaeen and on the 20th Safar? So this is the whole discussion we have been discussing, that why is it recommended to do Ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on this particular day. We said that we will be going into the different opinions of the scholars to see that how scholars are speculating answers, how scholars are giving probabilities, and there's nothing clear out here. And that is why I say this is one of those areas where there's a requirement for further research, okay? We need to keep our sensitivities aside and get into it with a serious research, okay? Now, if you remember, we mentioned the first opinion, Allama Madlis's opinion in the previous discussion, where he said that the reason Ziyarah is important is because Jabir went to Karbala on the 40th on the day of Arbaeen, and that is why it became one of the probable reasons he gives is that Jabir went, and that is why it becomes Mustahab. So we then say that this is not possible, and we don't follow the ashab and the companions of the imams are not hujjah for us, okay? And then we went further, one step further, by saying, what if the fourth Imam alayhi salam went to Ziyarah on this day? Then what happens? Does it even become recommended or no? This is something we discussed. Today, inshallah, we hopefully finish all the other four opinions. I'll go through them very quickly. So the second opinion is Sheikh Tusi, rahmatullah alayhi's opinion. What he does is, again, the whole point I'm trying to show you that all this is speculative, and this is something even Allama Madlisi mentioned, which we mentioned in the previous discussion, okay? Notice it says, وَيُسْتَحَبُّ زِيَارَتُهُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ فِيهِ وَهِيَ زِيَارَةُ الْأَرْبَعِينَ. Okay? So it's mustahab to do Ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the 20th, and that is Ziyarah of Arbaeen. Now, the basis, he quotes this riwayah from the 11th Imam alayhi salam in his Misbah al-Mutahajjid. This is a chainless narration, okay? So there's no chain at all, and thus it's a very weak narration, okay? So he quotes this narration from the 11th Imam alayhi salam. This is a famous narration which says that alamatul mu'min, the signs of a mu'min and a believer are 5. One of them is Ziyaratul Arbaeen, okay? So one of the signs of the believers is Ziyarah of Arbaeen. Now, this is the reasoning Sheikh Tusi is giving, that based on this riwayah, which is again a weak narration, okay? Again, I'm not saying it's a fabricated narration. I'll go further and discuss this issue in the end as we reach the discussion on the riwayats, okay? So, on this riwayah, based on this riwayah, Sheikh Tusi believes that it's mustahab. Now, some researchers have gone into this direction by saying that, notice, the hadith is not very clear that Ziyaratul Arbaeen of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is recommended, okay? Rather, it's a very general statement, it's a very absolute statement, that Ziyaratul Arbaeen. So some have gone into this understanding by saying this, that it can mean Ziyarah of 40 believers. Okay, you can't come up with this hadith by saying that it refers to the Ziyarah of the third Imam. It can also refer to the Ziyarah of 40 believers. Okay, as we go further, you'll see some have rejected this understanding. This was the second opinion. The third opinion is Ibn Shahr Ashub's opinion. Now, Ibn Shahr Ashub, very strangely, attributes this opinion to Sheikh Tusi. Now, we just studied Sheikh Tusi's opinion. He attributes this another opinion to Sheikh Tusi. Can you see how speculative things are becoming? Yeah. So he says Sheikh Tusi believes that the reason Ziyaratul Arbaeen is recommended is because this was the day when the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was returned back to Karbala to be buried with his body. And that is why وَقَالَ التُّوسِي وَمِنْهُ زِيَارَةُ الْأَرْبَعِينَ. Okay, and that is why Ziyaratul Arbaeen is recommended on this day, because the body was attached with the head on this day. Okay, this was the third opinion. The fourth opinion, I'm quoting it from Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani, the son of Ayatollah Sistani. So he has a book on Ilm al-Rijal. It's a 3-volume book called Qabasat fi Ilm al-Rijal. Okay, so I'm quoting from volume 3, page 655. He comes and says, now please pay attention to the wordings. The wordings are very important to come and show you that he now is rejecting all the other reasons mentioned by the earlier scholars we mentioned. Okay, he says وَهَذِهِ الرِّوَايَةِ. وَهَذِهِ الرِّوَايَةِ meaning he's referring to the hadith which has quoted the Ziyarah of Arbaeen. Okay, so the Ziyarah of Arbaeen, which we recite on the day of Arbaeen, that is the hadith and that is the riwayah which is quoting. It is narrated from the sixth Imam and it's a weak narration. Okay, this is something even Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani also accepts, that it's a weak narration. It has 2 unknown narrators within it at least. And he then goes on using other methods to authenticate it. But the chain is problematic. Okay, so notice the wordings now. So it says وَهَذِهِ الرِّوَايَةِ هِيَ عُمْدَةُ مَا يُسْتَدَلُّ بِهِ عَلَى إِسْتِحْبَابِ زِيَارَةِ الْإِمَامِ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ. So this is the only and the primary proof. Okay, it's the primary proof to be able to prove that for the mustahab, for ziyarah being mustahab on this day. Okay, so it's the primary evidence being used, nothing else. He says this is the only hadith which we have, which is telling you that the ziyarah of Arbaeen is mustahab. Okay, showing you that all the other reasons he is not accepting it. Okay, now further than that, he goes on making a point. Now I would like you to please concentrate on this. I get into these usulul fiqh discussions, but I believe they're important to be able to discuss and clarify this issue so that scholars then get into further areas of research into this. Okay, so he goes on further by saying, now what is he doing? He's responding to that understanding of those researchers who say that Ziyaratul Arbaeen can mean ziyarah of 40 believers. Okay, so those researchers who say that Ziyaratul Arbaeen can mean ziyarah of 40 believers also. So he's coming and rejecting that. Why? He's saying, لا ريب في أن عنوان زيارة الأربعين إنما يختص بزيارته فيه في مناسبة الأربعين. Okay, there's no doubt. Okay, he says that there's no doubt that the title of Ziyaratul Arbaeen, so this title Ziyaratul Arbaeen is specific for the third Imam alayhi salam and nobody else. Okay, now the point I'm trying to go further is in here. He says في مرتكزات المؤمنين وما هم عليه خلفا عن سلف. Okay, so he's trying to say that this title of Ziyaratul Arbaeen is specifically associated with Imam. Why? It's because it's within the Murtakizat al-Mu'mineen. It's okay. It's an established tradition within the believers. Throughout the centuries, the believers have basically accepted this whole notion that whenever somebody says Ziyaratul Arbaeen, it means it refers to the third Imam alayhi salam. So he says one century and the other century and going till the predecessors, they all have believed that whenever you say Ziyaratul Arbaeen, yes, it means the ziyarah of the third Imam alayhi salam. Okay, do you get his point? Now, the question we have is here, and this is where we'll then go into a small usulul fiqh discussion. This is an ishkal, or rather we would say that this is an area where there's research required now. When he's claiming that centuries over centuries have done this, okay, whenever you tell them that they believe Ziyaratul Arbaeen means the ziyarah of the third Imam. So the question now comes in that, okay, until you reach the 4th century, this is where the scholarship of Shiism starts. Yes, we see this, okay, that you will see scholars using this word. We quoted Sheikh Tusi also. Sheikh Tusi is also from the 4th, 5th century. So they have used the word Ziyaratul Arbaeen to mean ziyarah of the third Imam. The question we have is here. Does it go back to the Salaf, meaning to the Imam himself, or at least the companions of the Imam, or no? This is a very important question, and hardly I've seen any research being done in this area. The research which is required is here, that was this a practice of the companions of the Imams? Whenever they would hear the word Ziyaratul Arbaeen, they would go for the ziyarah of Arbaeen, or they would understand ziyarah of Arbaeen of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Is that how the companions understood? Okay, rather we go further. Did the Imams themselves understand it that way? So the question then comes in, if the companions understood it that way, did they go for Ziyaratul Arbaeen to the third Imam? This is an area of research. Did the Imams themselves go to ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Arbaeen? This is also, we have not found any evidence. Okay, as we go further, we'll even discuss the whole issue of Imams going for ziyarah. We have not found any evidence showing that the companions understood it this way, apart from the 2 riwayats, which we will come to as we go further. Okay, so now, this brings us to this usulul fiqh discussion, and that is the whole discussion of Seeratul Mutashariah. Okay, Seeratul Mutashariah is something which is discussed by the usulul fiqh scholars. So this is again discussed in Mabahithul Hujjah. Whenever they say that what constitutes an evidence, one of the ways of proving something is an evidence is they use Seeratul Mutashariah. In English, you can probably call it the established practice of the religious people, okay? So the religious people have some established practices. That is called Seeratul Mutashari'ah, okay? So now, to give you an example, and then come back to giving. So for example, you will see today's, I'm just giving this example, I don't know how far it's true or not, but for example, you'll see the religious people, those who are religiously observant people, they wear dashdasha, okay? I don't know what's it called in English. We call it kanzu in Kiswahili, yeah? This dashdasha, this robe which we wear, this kanzu which we wear, this is a sign of religious community. So you will notice that religious people, for example, they will wear a cloth, okay? If they decide, all religious people decide that this is the cloth they are going to wear, it becomes Seeratul Mutashari'ah, but as we go further, so in this time, this is a very important point I'm trying to make. Seeratul Mutashari'ah, which Sheikh Hubbullah explains it very nicely. Now, before I get into explaining Sheikh Hubbullah, so let me explain you Seeratul Mutashari'ah by 2 examples used in fiqh books. So, for example, when the scholars are asked that can a woman become a mujtahid or a qadi? Okay, can she become a mujtahid or a judge? Normally, there's no evidence out there. There's nothing in the Quran or the Hadith refusing that. Okay, there's nothing prohibiting them from becoming qadi and a mujtahid and a marja. Okay. And that is why you will notice some earlier scholars used to believe, and even some contemporary scholars believe, that a woman can become a mujtahid, a marja also. and can become a qadi and a judge. Okay? These are the discussions in fiqh. I don't want to get into those discussions that, oh, women are emotional and all whatnot. Those are discussions that are not done in fiqh. The fiqh discussion is done is that, okay, we don't have evidence here. So what do we base upon? So some, like Sayyid Khoy, will come and tell you madhaq sharia. Inshallah, as we go further, we might go discuss some other time. Some will use Seeratul Mutashariah. Seeratul Mutashariah meaning what? They will say that yes, we don't have any dalil and proof, but this is how religious people have observed throughout centuries. Okay, so if you look at religious people throughout centuries, you will see them never appointing a woman as a judge, never appointing a woman as a marja. So thus we come now conclude that, okay, religion also doesn't want women to become, okay? I don't know if I'm explaining it in a way that it's explainable. That there's absence of proof, but the practice of the religious people throughout centuries makes it a proof by itself. Okay? So to give you another example, lately there have been discussions that, you know, with the coming of AI now, artificial intelligence, and all this ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all these other platforms, there's a discussion, can a marja, can ChatGPT become a marja now, okay? And people discuss issues and all whatnot. So now, if you go back to your madrasa books, you will notice that you are being taught that a marja has to be a Shia Ithna Ashari. Okay? He has to be Shia Ithna Ashari. That means he's a Muslim and a Shia Ithna Ashari. So some contemporary researchers now, they're coming and saying, no, why is this condition put in a marja? Okay, now I'm not saying I accept it or I reject it. Okay, I'm just mentioning and explaining the whole concept of Seerah Mutashariah. Okay, so these researchers come and tell you. So when you come and ask them that why should it be a Shia, they will come and tell you that the proof is Seerah Mutashariah. Okay, it's because the religious people have observed it throughout centuries. That is why we are also saying that this is our proof. Now, these researchers are coming and countering it by saying this, that no, see, the Shias accept riwayats from non-Shias also. Okay, so we have in our books of riwayats, those who are Sunnis, those who are Waqifis, those who are Fathiyas, those who are Sunnis also, Zaydis also, again, non-12ers, okay? They are accepting hadith from them. The condition being set is what? The condition is this, that a rawi and the narrator has to be trustworthy, okay? And they discuss other conditions, but he has to be trustworthy. So these researchers now are coming and telling you that a marja also doesn't need to be a Shia or a Muslim. They are telling you that a marja can be a marja as long as he is knowledgeable and as long as he is trustworthy and honest. This is very important, okay? So as long as he is knowledgeable, he has the knowledge which is required in a marja, but he's also honest and trustworthy, meaning he will not get biased to one opinion because of his dishonesty. Rather, he's a fair-minded person. These researchers now are coming and telling you, yes, this is possible, this is theirs. The religious people have also acted upon it. Look at the riwayats also. So they're trying to break the Seerah Mutashariah like that. Okay? I hope I explain what is Seerah Mutashariah. The practice of religious people throughout centuries. Now, come back to the issue of Arbaeen. Sheikh Hubbullah, in one of the questions he was asked was the same issue. So he's explaining this whole issue of Seerah Mutashariah. I want to take it and apply it to the whole issue of Arbaeen. Okay? Seerah Mutashariah and this established practice of religious people, he says, ذلك أن تكون المسألة سيرة وعادة بين كل متدينين. It's a practice which is there prevalent through all the religious observant people. Okay, so all the believers are practicing that. Now, important condition is here. بحيث تكشف عن رأي المعصوم. This is important, okay? Any ritual or any act within the religious people is not Seerah Mutashariah. So if today, the example I was giving, if all the people today, the religious people decide they will wear kanzu and dashdasha today, that doesn't make it mustahab. That doesn't make it part of deen and Seerah Mutashariah. Why? Because it's not telling you that this is the real opinion of the Prophet or the Imam. So Seerah Mutashariah is only evidence when it tells you that this is the opinion of the Imam or the opinion of the Holy Prophet. If it's not, then Seerah Mutashari'ah doesn't apply here. Okay? So as I said, today's all believers want to wear kanzu. Let them wear. Beautiful. But does it become Seerah Mutashari'ah? No. It's a recent Seerah Mutashari'ah which doesn't give us the opinion of the Imam. And thus it cannot be used as evidence. I hope you are getting me what I'm trying to say, okay? And that is why he goes further by saying, وَهَذَا مَا يُشْتَرَطُ فِيهِ أَن يَكُونَ مُعَاصِرًا لِزَمَنِ الْمَعْصُومِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ. So this practice has to be prevalent during the time of the Imam alayhi salam to be considered as Seerah Mutashari'ah. If it's not prevalent during the time of the Imam, then it's not considered as one. Now, why did I bring all this issue up? The point I was trying to make, the ishkal and the question I had was, can we prove that the companions of the Imams used to practice Ziyaratul Arbaeen, which was practiced from the 4th century onwards? Can we prove that? If yes, beautiful. Or can we even prove that the Imams themselves were practicing this? So we don't have any Imam going for Ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Arbaeen. Okay? And thus there are questions which require further research. I hope I could explain. This was the 4th opinion. The 5th opinion is the opinion of Sayyid ibn Tawus. So Sayyid ibn Tawus' opinion is similar to Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani's opinion, except a small difference. Okay? So what did Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani believe? He said that the reason it's mustahab, it's because of the ziyarah of Arbaeen itself, and that is why this is mustahab. Similar opinion by Sayyid ibn Tawus. The difference lies here. One, we mentioned previously that Sayyid ibn Tawus doesn't believe in that the 4th Imam came to Karbala on the day of Arbaeen. Number one. Okay? So that breaks the whole issue about that thing. And the second opinion he also doesn't believe in is that Jabir. So we are now discussing, okay, did Jabir even come to Karbala on the day of Arbaeen? Sayyid ibn Tawus has question marks. Okay? So he says, فَإِنْ كَانَ جَابِرْ وَصَلَ زَائِرًا مِنَ الْحِجَازِ. If Jabir was supposed to come from Hijaz, that's Saudi Arabia, then he would have needed more than 40 days to be able to reach to Karbala. Because until the news reaches Hijaz, and then until he prepares to come, that would have taken more than 40 days for him to reach. So he didn't come, either he didn't come, or then he goes on by further saying that probably. Now can you see speculations now, okay? This is what I'm trying to say. It's all speculative. It's all probabilities being provided. It's possible that he was not in Saudi, okay? He was not in Hijaz. He was nearby in Kufa. And that is why he got the news quickly and then he came from Kufa and he came back to Karbala, okay? Speculations, nothing there as concrete, okay? So the reason I brought Sayyid ibn Tawus' opinion, yes, he believes Ziyaratul Arba'een is there, but he is dismissing the coming of Jabir and is dismissing the coming of the 4th Imam alayhi salam also to Karbala. So these were 5 opinions which were out there. Now, finally, we want to have this discussion. So, we discussed all the 5 opinions of different scholars. I hope that all the opinions I've managed to collect them together. The only issue now which remains is the 2 riwayat. So there are 3 riwayats, but the third riwayat is not very important. There are 2 riwayats, okay, when it comes to the whole issue of Arbaeen. You noticed one riwayah was quoted by Sheikh Tusi, and one riwayah is quoted by Sayyid Ibn Tawus and Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani. So these are the 2 riwayats now the scholars rely upon to be able to make it mustahab. As I mentioned, both the riwayah, one riwayah is chainless altogether, okay? From the 11th Imam, it's chainless altogether, there's no chain. The other riwayah which we mentioned it's weak. There are 2 at least minimum narrators who are problematic within the narration. So now, when we say it's weak, we are not implying it's fabricated. Please get this issue very clearly. You know, sometimes when we say weak, some people quickly jump on and say, okay, weak doesn't mean fabrication. We also accept that weak doesn't mean fabrication. So we are not implying that these riwayats are fabricated. But there's a principle in hadith which, strangely, scholars in some places, they apply these rigorous principles. When it comes to some other issues, they become so lenient and so, they forget all those principles, okay? So in hadith, we have this principle that a hadith which is weak cannot be relied upon, okay, unless there are other conditions acted upon. So there are so many conditions being mentioned. One of the condition is this, that we should have strong authentic proof from outside which can serve as a corroborating evidence to be able to strengthen this weak hadith. Do you get me? So if there's a mention in the Quran, then that makes a weak hadith get strength. For Arbaeen, we don't have anything. If we have strong and authentic hadith outside from the Holy Prophet or from the Imams, which are strong and authentic, then that strengthens this weak hadith, which we don't have them. Okay? So now we are stuck. Okay, we then went into shuhra. Again, shuhra can work here. All types of shuhra have issues here. Okay, shuhra amaliyya, shuhra riwa'iyya, all what we discussed. Popularity, can it work here? No. Okay, because shuhra has to start from the time of the Imams. Okay, if you want to prove that popularity, it has to start from the time of the Imams and come down. Okay, it's missing out here. Seerah Mutashariah, we said also is missing. So now what now compensates the weakness of this hadith? Okay, what can you use to be able to compensate? What is the corroborating evidence to be able to compensate for the weakness of this hadith? So the only thing I found out now is that scholars can now go to this principle, which is called the principle of leniency, what they call Adilatu Tasamuh fi Adilatu sunan. Okay, the principle of leniency. Okay, and that is what I want to complete my discussion with. This is a book called Qa'idat Tasamuh dar Adillah Sunan. Okay, it's discussing, the whole book is about the principle, the same principle of leniency. It's written by the son of Ayatollah Fadil Lankarani, who is an Ayatollah himself, Ayatollah Muhammad Jawad Fadil Lankarani. Okay, so what's the basis? So let's start. What's the basis of this principle? So there Sahib Wasa'il, the author of Wasa'il al-Shia, has quoted 9 riwayats in his Wasa'il al-Shia to prove this principle. So the hadith is this. It's the hadith from the 6th Imam alayhi salam, which says that man balaghahu anin nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ali shay'un min al-thawab. So a hadith reaches you, a report reaches you saying that the Holy Prophet has said something about something. So the Holy Prophet is saying, if you do a certain action, you will get this much reward. Okay, this is the hadith. Okay, فَفَعَلَ ذَلِكَ طَلَبَ قَوْلِ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وآله. And this person, without investigating, okay, that's the context of hadith, without investigating goes and performs that action. Why? Because he says, oh, the Holy Prophet has said it, but I'm doing it. Okay? So then the Imam, now is the Imam said it or not? This is a debate and discussion which needs to be done. كان له ذلك الثواب وإن كان النبي صلى الله عليه وآله لم يقله. This is the whole discussion. Okay? So he will get the reward even if the Holy Prophet has not said that hadith. You see, the dangerous part is here now. So even if the Holy Prophet has not said it, you still get the reward for it. Okay? So this now has brought up a debate within the discussion, within the scholars. The hadith is famously known by the hadith of man balagh. Okay? If you just search it online also, man balagh, okay, or the principle of leniency, you will get these ahadith. Now, some scholars have gone on to try and prove the riwayats are mutawatir. Okay, so discussion number one. Some scholars have gone on to prove that these riwayats are mutawatir. Why? Because the author of Wasa'il al-Shia, Shk Ali Karmali, quotes 9 narrations. Ayatollah Muhammad Jawad Lankarani rejects that. He says out of the 9, 2 riwayats are not even related to the discussion. Okay, so 2 go out. Remain 7. Out of the 7, 4 are from one narrator. And this is the biggest problem we have, really, unfortunately, within the Shias and the Sunnis. Sometimes we claim tawatur just because it's there in multiple books, not realizing that one narrator has narrated it, but it's quoted in multiple books. The condition in tawatur is this, that multiple narrators in different ages and centuries should have narrated it. Okay? So at the time of the Holy Prophet, you should have, for example, for Hadith al-Ghadir, you have 20 to 30 narrators. Okay? After that, you have 110 narrators. Can you see this? Okay? So here is real tawatur happening. You have 30, and then you have 110, and then you have tabi'is narrating in the same almost number. That becomes a mutawatir hadith. A mutawatir hadith doesn't become like this. There's a single narrator from the 6th Imam and then 50 narrators from the later generation. That doesn't make it mutawatir. Okay? Now, strangely, the scholars will claim there's a tawatur there. No. So Sheikh Jawad goes on to say, no, there's no tawatur here. Why? Because 4 hadith become 1. So from 7, it becomes 3. Do you get me? Okay? So the max you can say is the 3 to 4 riwayats. Max. Now from 3 to 4 riwayats, you cannot claim tawatur. Okay, the max you can claim is mustafid and istifada. That also is a discussion based on the sanad of the riwayats and the implication of the riwayats also, and the content and the text of the riwayats. That's discussion number 1. Discussion number 2, the scholars now discuss, and this is where the danger is coming. The reason I said it's dangerous, it's not because I say it. Scholars are mentioning the dangers of it. Okay? On page number, this is early in the book only, on page number 8, he discusses these dangers. He says that, notice, and page number 9 also he repeats it again. He says that وَدِیده میشود که در پی روشن نشدن مرزهای تسامح. This is the danger. Okay? A lot of times the problem is this, that the limits and the boundaries of this leniency and tasamuh is not known. Till where do you use it? And I'll come and tell you how scholars have used it also. If you use it in mustahabbat, the way some scholars have said, no, now the scholars are going further. Does this hadith allow that? That's a question mark which needs to be discussed, okay? So, he says that marzai tasamuh is not known. The boundaries and the limits of tasamuh is not known. Scholars are now using it in different areas. Is it really true? Then he goes تحریف های بی دین و فرهنگ دینی را یافته و روایت های سست و گاه ناسازگار با سنت در کتاب های روایی جای گرفته است. Okay? What has happened is now fabrications and superstitions have been penetrating the books of hadith because of this hadith. So they use this hadith to be able to justify that, okay, any weak hadith can go in the books of riwayat and no problem. Why? Because, the Prophet has said, you can even say something which is not attributed to him, he has not said it. Okay? وَإِن سهلنگاری‌ها در سند و بی توجهی به محتوا و گسستگی آن از دیگر گزاره‌های دینی زمینه خردگیری مخالفان را فراهم آورده است. Okay, I hope I can explain this. He's saying now this has become a reason for those who are not Shias to now start attacking Shiism. They look in the books of riwayat. What has been written inside the books? Okay? What has come inside your books? This is a problematic issue. Why? One of the reasons is because of this principle of leniency. Anything, okay, just accept it. Just because leniency allows it, let's go with it. Now, the point he was trying to make is the boundaries are unknown. And really, look at the boundaries are unknown now altogether. The scholars are just keeping on using it in different areas. Initially, okay, and I'll come to it also, when did it start also? Initially, it was being used in Mustahab only. Mustahab and makruh. As I come and quote Sayyid Sistani also, you will see this, okay? It's been used in Mustahab and makruh. So, the Prophet has said something, the Imam has said something, okay. Even if he didn't say that, you will act upon it because it's Mustahab, okay? Or makruh. The scholars now are taking it further than that. Shows you that the limits now are blurred now, okay? So notice, he says that they are using it in tariq now, okay? History of the Prophet and the Imams now is becoming. You go and ask people who sit on the minbar and on the pulpit, go and ask them, where is the source? What's the source of this narration? They'll tell you Tasamuh, okay? The scholars allow principle of leniency. You allow whatever to say. As long as it's there in the books, just say it. The Holy Prophet and Imams have not said it. He says, no problem. This principle allows us, okay? It's gone further. In the books of du'as, okay? And sometimes when we come and question du'as, this is it. Some of the du'as have been penetrated in the books of du'as because of this principle. Okay? Further than that, he quotes Shahid Awwal. This is on page number 15. Okay? Notice, Shahid Awwal, he says that لكن أحاديث الفضائل يتسامح فيها عند أهل العلم. Okay? So now, history, du'as, another area now. Okay? Fada'il, the merits. Ya Allah. And then you open up Shias and Sunnis. You look at the merits being mentioned. You come and see Fada'il. Tell them what's the source. They'll tell you, it's written in Biharul Anwar. No problem. What's the source of Bihar? We don't know. No problem. It's Tasamuh fi Adilatu sunan. Okay? Now, the author goes on further by saying that Fada'il can include Mustahabbat, will also include Ziyarat, another literature, which is another issue, which again, as we go further, we'll quote Ayatollah Sistani as we go further in the next subsequent discussions. Kiramat, miracles and mu'jizas. Ya Allah, you ask people, what's the source? Why is it happening? Because of this principle. Okay? Manaqib of A'imma Ma'sumin, okay? The merits of Imams alayhimus salam. Go look at their merits in the early classical books and the later books. And then you will see what the difference is there, okay? Shaykh Awwal goes on further, okay? Shaykh Thani, sorry. He goes and says, نحو القصص والمواعظ وفضائل الأعمال. Notice, the boundary is just getting blur and blur even more. So stories, it's okay. You can tell people stories and no problem. Okay? And this is why you will notice that stories, people mention stories and no worry. When you ask them the source, they'll tell you, certain book Which certain book? Unknown. Okay? Mawa'id, the advices, the ethical advices, and this is where also you see the books of scholarly works. Okay, the books of the likes of Ghazali in the Sunni world, and in the Shia world, the likes of Mahajjatul Bayda of Faiz Kashani, Mullah Faiz Kashani. You see, go and see inside the riwayats. Inshallah, one day, if we get time, we can come and see the kind of riwayats in these books. You will come and see the type of riwayats, all based on what? This principle. Okay? Fada'ilul a'mal now. It's gone further now. So if you do this action and do this action, all this comes under the rule of principle of leniency. Okay? Now, the final discussion I want to have, otherwise the discussion is long. If we get into a fiqh discussion, it's a long discussion by itself. When did this principle come up? Okay? So we saw the riwayats are there. Sheikh Kulaini mentions one or two riwayats. Sheikh Saduq also mentions, but not in his Man La Yahdurul Faqih. He mentions it in his Sawab al-A'mal. Okay? Showing you that if he's not quoted in it, Man La Yahdurul Faqih, he himself doesn't accept it as such. Okay? So, Sheikh Jawad Lankarani, on page number 11, he comes and tells you that when we came and researched, he says that پیش از علامه حلی از دلیلی به نام دلیل تسامح یاد نشده است. Okay? When you go to classical scholars now, okay? Before Allama Hilli, you will find out that this principle was never used. Okay? This principle was never used. It started getting used from the time of Allama Hilli. Okay? Now, I'll come to Allama Hilli. This is a book, inshallah. I'm sorry I'm crossing the time today, but I'll like to mention this also. So, finally, the point which I wanted to mention in regards to this whole issue of Tasamuh. Notice, this is the view of Ayatollah Sistani. In his Minhaj al-Salihin, volume 1. So this is a Minhaj al-Salihin is a book of Islamic laws, yeah, in Arabic. Notice what he says. This is ruling number 32, okay? So he says, إن كثيرا من المستحبات المذكورة في أبواب هذه الرسالة. A lot of mustahab actions which we have mentioned in this book. That means in the Islamic laws book. يبتني استحبابها على قاعدة التسامح في أدلة السنن. They are all based upon this principle. Do you get me? So mustahab and makruh. A lot of riwayats are weak riwayats. Okay, when some people come and question these riwayats, because they're weak riwayats. Okay, and these are where scholars need to come out and tell the people, okay, these are weak riwayats. This is what research should be done. This is how research should be done. Not come and use it as gospel truth. Okay, and this is according to Ayatollah Sistani. Also notice, he says that yes, we have mentioned a lot of mustahab and makruh issues in this book, but they're all based on weak narrations, and thus we have used the principle of leniency. So, Agha, do you accept it yourself? He says, no. وَلَمَّا لَمْ تَثْبُتْ عِنْدَنَا. Now, the problem is this principle is not proved for us. We don't accept it. According to Ayatollah Sistani, he says, we don't accept this principle. So then what? Should we do this mustahab and avoid the makruh or not? He says, فَيَتَعَيَّنُ الْإِتْيَانِ بِهَا بِرَجَاءِ الْمَطْلُوبِيَّةِ. So now, you are not doing it with the niyyah, the way we saw in the hadith. That means Ayatollah Sistani is rejecting that hadith. He doesn't accept that hadith. Okay? The way the hadith says that, okay, the Holy Prophet has said something, okay, you do it according to, because the Prophet has said it, and you'll get thawab for it. No, he says no. He says you will do it with the hope that Allah gives you the thawab for it. But if there's no thawab for it, then okay. Okay? Do you get me? You have raja'ul matlubiyya. You have hope that probably Allah will reward for this. Is there a surety? No. Do you get me? Okay? So, finally I end with Allama Hilli. So, I finished my discussion on the whole discussion of Why is it mustahab? Notice the scholars' opinions are all assumptions, all speculative, and this is something Allama Majlis himself clarifies that there's no reason mentioned. There's no cause mentioned as to why it's mustahab. The scholars should be very clear in their research that what is the reason then, okay? Or there's no reason available out there, okay? This whole thing, I proved it to be able to come to this conclusion that probably the scholars are now using tasamuh and the whole principle of leniency. And then we ended up discussing this whole principle of leniency, that is principle of leniency even accepted or no? A lot of scholars, the classical scholars, all didn't even discuss it. That means they rejected it. You have the current scholars and contemporary scholars like Ayatollah Sistani. Unfortunately, we keep on saying we want to follow him and follow him. And then when it comes to such laws, we sideline him at times, yeah? So, finally, I would like to discuss this whole issue of Allama Hilli very briefly. See, the discussion was this, that this whole principle of leniency started from the time of Allama Hilli. Now, whenever we are discussing issues, we have to check the timeline. This is how scholars do research, okay? Now, a lot of times when we need to come up and see that some of the rulings, even in the fiqh books, you will notice that they reach Allama Hilli and they don't go further, okay? And one of the reason is this, that he used riwayats from the Sunni books. Do you get me? Now, this is not me saying it. This is a book, it's a beautiful book, Nigahi be Makatib Fiqhiyya Shi'a, okay? This is a study on the different schools of thought within the Shia fiqh, okay? It's written by a scholar from Mashhad. He's a very good scholar in terms of knowing books and knowing scholarly methodologies. His name is Muhammad Hassan Rabbani. He has a lot of books. On page number 107, notice he says, از کارهای مهم دیگر علامه حلی بهره‌گیری از روایات عمومی اهل سنت در نگارش فقه است. What Allama Hilli did was that he started using Sunni riwayats and brought them in within Shia hadith corpus and started using it. Now, I personally don't have issues of using Sunni riwayats as long as we have some commonalities in between. Not that you suddenly bring up a hadith from that side there's no basis on this side. Okay? Now, you notice that the scholars didn't use this, and suddenly you see Allama Hilli bringing this hadith from there and bringing it into the Shia circle. Okay? Now, sometimes it can have repercussions. The example I can give you, Professor Mudarrisi, Dr. Mudarrisi has an article of around 35-40 pages. It's on the tahrif of Quran, okay? On the whole issue of the fabrication in the Quran. He claims, okay, this is his claim, and this is something which needs to be worked upon. He has come up with a lot of evidences. He is proving that the riwayats, so the riwayats of tahrif of Quran, the riwayats of fabrication in the Quran were initially there in the Sunni books. Do you get me? Were there in the Sunni books and then later came to Shia books. And he will give examples from the early books of Sunnis. He has given lots of examples of how, and that is why you will see the riwayats of fabrication in the books of Sunnis, like Bukhari even. Okay? In Sahih Bukhari, you will see riwayats of chapters getting lost. Okay? Now this is where they come and accuse Shias, that Shias believe in fabrication and their scholars believe in fabrication. Yes, I'm not denying some Akhbari scholars believed in that. But you have a scholar like Sahih Bukhari and Bukhari who believes that whatever is compiled is a Sahih. What does it tell you? What does it tell you? Okay, that means he believed in this opinion also. Why? Because they were muhaddithin. They used to believe in hadith more than the Quran. We'll come and prove this as we go further also. Okay? So, this is the claims Dr. Mudarris is making, that the Sunni riwayats came into Shia riwayats and they started affecting the repercussions at times can be very bad. Okay, and this is what scholars call it a riwayatul muntaqila. Okay, sometimes the books, the riwayats come from one book to another, one side to another side, or vice versa. Okay, this sometimes happens. So the reason we are having issues with Allama Hilli coming up with Sunni riwayats, it's not because we have issues with Sunni riwayats. Okay, we have issues with riwayats which are problematic at times coming on this side. And you see a lot of examples you can give, inshallah, some other time in the future. Okay, so notice, he then goes on further by saying that, now see, this is one of the dangers also, that Majmu'e as in riwayat Muhammad ibn Abi Jumhur Ihsa'i dar kitab Awaliul Layali gird avarde ast. Okay, so a lot of these riwayats have been compiled by the name of a scholar named Ihsa'i. This is an 10th, 11th century scholar in his Awaliul Layali. Okay, so this was a question being raised to the Shias, that Shias don't have riwayats from the Sunnis. So now he brings up these riwayats from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they're without sanad. Majority of them are without sanad. How do you prove the authenticity of these riwayats? Do you get me? Okay. Now, I'm clarifying, I'm not a follower of a sanad methodology, okay? But I'm trying to say that you have to have a strong evidence within the books. Now, look at what happens. I give you one example and I finish. So there's a hadith attributed to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Shia books. It's come from the Sunni books, okay? So the Prophet is attributed to have said, "Alal yad ma ukhidat hatta tuaddi." So I'm sorry, I'm getting into tangents again. For those of you who want, you can refer to this book, okay? 30 Principles of Islamic Jurisprudence. This is by Ayatollah Sayyid Fadil Milani, okay? It's in English, that's why I'm introducing it. The first chapter discusses this principle. Possession indicates ownership. So scholars discuss principles in fiqh. These are called the legal maxims, okay? So you have riwayats from the Imams or from the Holy Prophet which can be termed as principles. Okay, and then the scholars will use it in deducing fiqhi understanding and fiqhi laws from that. Okay, so now the thing which is happening is this riwayah is not found in Shia books. Okay, it's found in Sunni books. What is the ruling? So there are two, you will find two principles. There's one principle called Qa'ida al-Yad and Qa'ida dhil-Yad. Okay, now I don't want to get into these principles. These are discussed in fiqh discussions. One is al-Yad, dhil-Yad, meaning whatever you possess. Okay, so whatever you're holding in your hand. Okay, so for example, I'm holding a book in my hand. That means I am the owner of this book. Okay, unless and until somebody else comes and claims, that means I have to then prove my ownership on this book. These are logical principles. This is Qa'ida dhil-Yad. And then you have Qa'ida al-Yad. Qa'ida al-Yad means what? You get a book from somebody, it's in your possession at the moment, but it's not yours. Okay, so until you have it in your possession, you will hold it as a trust until you return it back. So notice, the principle has no issues, okay? The principle is a very logical principle, but the question is this a hadith from the Prophet or not? This is the issue we are discussing, okay? Now, this hadith attributed to the Holy Prophet comes in within the Shia books brought in by Allama Hilli. Look at what happens now. It says, Allama Hilli wa peyrowanesh mawrid tamassuk qarar gireft. So Allama Hilli and his followers started using this hadith as a prophetic hadith. It's not there in our books, coming from that side. Okay? After Allama Hilli, the time of Shaykh Thani and Muhaqqiq Qaraki, this riwayah became mashhur now. We have discussed popularity. Okay? Shuhra riwaiya, if you remember, we discussed. A hadith becomes popular. Even if it's not there, it becomes a popular hadith. Okay, so suddenly this hadith turned into a popular hadith being accepted by all scholars. Now the worst part is here. Okay, he says passes on after that in year 2000, year 1000, sorry, Hijrah, in 1000 Hijrah and onwards, بعد از مشهورات مورد عمل قرار گرفت، بلکه درباره آن گفته اند سزاوار نیست که درباره سند آن بحث کنیم. This is the danger now. Can you see that now scholars started acting upon it? It was not only popular, but they started acting upon it. To the level, this is the dangerous part of it, to the level when you tell a scholar that check its sanad, they will tell you there's no need for it because it's so popular that you don't need to check a sanad. So a hadith which was non-existent in the classical works, suddenly in the 8th century it appears in our books. In the 9th, 10th century it starts being acted upon and becomes popular. In the 11th, 12th century now it becomes popular to that level that now scholars will not even discuss the sanad of it. If you ask them sanad, they will tell you no. It's such a popular hadith that doesn't need to be checked. This is the effect of Allama Hilli, okay? Now, the reason I mention this is just to understand that a lot of times you see that this evolution of some concepts start at a particular time. Before that time, that concept is not there. So similarly, this issue of principle of leniency, it was there at the time of Allama Hilli and then later. Earlier than that, it's not found within the scholars, okay? In conclusion, I've already concluded, by the way. So in conclusion, I hope I could clarify. We were discussing the whole issue of why is Arbaeen significant? Why is the 20th of Safar significant? Is there any evidence for that? We discussed the different opinions of the scholars as to why do they consider it as Mustahab. And then we finally ended up by saying that they use the principle of leniency. And then we discussed the whole principle of leniency by showing you that the classical scholars have not used it. It's from the time of Allama Hilli and onwards using it. And then we discussed partially, inshallah, if Allah gives tawfiq in future, we can discuss Allama Hilli further with case studies and show you the effect of some of the fatawas of Allama Hilli, which now have become popular fatawas. These were effect coming from Allama Hilli, okay? Before that, you don't see that ruling, but you see it from Allama Hilli onwards. And when you trace it back, you will notice that riwayah comes from the Sunni riwayats, okay? Now, finally, I would like to again repeat this again. I am not against the Sunni riwayats, okay? I remember attending, I'm sorry, I'm taking time, I'm sorry for this, but I remember attending a lecture of this scholar. Wallahi, I've learned a lot from this scholar. He had a very beautiful methodology. When he used to come to Sunni riwayats, he used to check the commonalities, okay? So when you see riwayats here and you see riwayats here, you come and get a lot of itminan and you get a lot of certainty that, okay, this hadith can now be accepted. But when they go alone now, okay, so you have riwayats in the Shia books, but you don't have them in the Sunni books. Okay, then now they need to be checked with a lot of principles you go through. Okay, so for example, when it comes to riwayats of the likes of the narrators like Abu Huraira, who are questionable narrators, he would say, I don't get into the riwayats of these narrators. Okay, why? Because they are questionable narrators. And within the Shias also, there are those who are questionable narrators. We don't go into those riwayats unless and until you come and prove it via some other stronger evidences, and then you accept those riwayats. Okay, again, I'm sorry for taking up your time. Let's pray to Allah. Allah give us the tawfiq to be able to understand our religion the way He wants it from us, and to be able to be practicing Muslim. And Allah help the madhlumeen. Allah help all the oppressed in the world, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.